Greetings to you. I'm Keith Massey. I'm sure you're familiar with the story of King Arthur. From the earliest scanty references in medieval records and literature, the saga of Camelot and the Knights of the Round Table was embellished over time such that historians wonder what of the actual history of Arthur himself, in fact, whether he was even really a king, can be determined from later sources. In the oldest actual reference to Arthur himself, he is not called a king, but rather a dux bellorum, literally leader of wars. So it may be that if there really was an historical figure behind that name, he was something more along the lines of a warlord of sorts. And other elements so familiar in the story, such as Arthur pulling the sword Excalibur from the stone, the Knights of the Round Table themselves, the betrayal by his wife Guinevere with the knight Lancelot, not to mention the quest for the Holy Grail. These were certainly things that never actually happened to the warlord Arthur. And I have two videos I made on the Holy Grail, what it really was and where it might be now, if you're interested. Geoffrey of Monmouth, in his work History of the Kings of Britain, describes the Battle of Cambriae, in which King Arthur killed his traitorous nephew Mordred. In this 12th century work, the fact that Arthur and Mordred were enemies is unambiguous there. However, the oldest reference to Mordred in any connection to King Arthur is in the 10th century Annales Cambriae, which states that in the year 537 there occurred Gwaith Camlan, in qua Arthur et Medraut corruerunt, the Battle of Camlan, in which Arthur and Medraut fell. It has been noted by some scholars that this short text does not make it clear whether the two fell in combat against each other or potentially alongside each other as allies against a common enemy. In other words, is it possible that in an older tradition, Arthur and Mordred, two known figures of the past, died as allies in a battle once upon a time, and Geoffrey of Monmouth has later created a new account and turned allies into enemies in his fictionalized version? In this video, I will demonstrate that a study of key Latin phrases in other literature makes it clear that they did indeed die together on the battlefield, but definitely as enemies. The Latin verb corruere means to fall, and figuratively to die. It can describe an object falling, as in this reference from the Roman historian Suetonius. The equestrian statues which were erected for him in several places fell at the same time, their legs suddenly having been broken. Pariter corruerunt, fell at the same time. The adverb pariter in this quote can be translated as at the same time, together, equally, or in like manner. St. Jerome uses the verb corruere in his Vulgate translation of the Bible when he describes the sons of Jacob unwittingly doing homage to their brother Joseph, who had become a high-ranking Egyptian official. And all fell together before him on the ground. Pariter corruerunt, fell together. What is curious about Jerome's translation here is that there is no word in the Hebrew which corresponds to pariter. The Hebrew simply says, Vayepalu lifanav artsa, and they fell before him to the ground. So, for Jerome to add it here, when he wants to describe the brothers not just falling to the ground, but falling together to the ground, it would seem those two words do work together idiomatically when you want to say people did something together, in concert or in common cause. The verb corruere can of course also appear without the adverb pariter, as it does in this letter from Cicero. 2 of my shops have fallen down, and the rest are cracking. Corruerunt, have fallen down. Presumably, one of Cicero's shops fell from disrepair. Then, sometime after, another one fell. If they had both fallen simultaneously, perhaps as the result of an earthquake, then Cicero would probably have employed the adverb pariter to express that. Now, what would be particularly helpful to better understand the passage from the Annales Cambriae would be a context in which the verb corruere is used to describe falling and dying in battle. Such a case occurs in the Venerable Bede's History of the English Church, describing a battle as follows. For having gone out against the nation of the Gewissi in battle, all fell together with their military. Pariter, cum sua militia corruerunt, fell together with their military. Once again, the adverb pariter here tells us they fell together in common cause, on the same side, against a common enemy. Yet another use of the verb in a battle setting comes from Geoffrey of Monmouth himself in his account of the battle in which Mordred dies. We read there the following. For in fact that heinous traitor fell, also many thousands fell with him, corruerunt et multa milia secum. The fact that the text states that these many thousands fell with him, the Latin word is secum, means they were on his side and died alongside him, in common cause with him. So now, let's return to look again at the Annales Cambriae. The death of Arthur and Mordred there is described in Latin as Gueith camlan, inqua Arthur et Medraut corruerunt. We might think this is technically ambiguous, but I don't believe it was to an original reader. The absence here of the adverb pariter, and the absence of any statement that one of them died with the other, means they did not die in common cause. I believe that even taken out of context, with no knowledge of any background story, a speaker of Latin would interpret this sentence to mean that those 2 men both fought and died in a battle, but not as allies. They died as enemies. Scholars debate how much of the Arthurian legends were Geoffrey of Monmouth's own literary creation. My conclusion is that, at least as regards Mordred, but possibly a lot more, what Geoffrey of Monmouth presents in his History of the Kings of Britain was not his own invention. He is fleshing out stories that already have considerable detail in either written or oral form before he published his work. He may have brought these legends to life, but he did not create them.